Just to talk a few minutes about people that have belonged to the Historical Society. Since we last met, our town historian of about 6 years, Bob Mullen, passed away. And we remember all the work that he did, and we just remember his family. And his wife is still living at 400 Towers in Batavia. Just as recently, we heard the passing of Darwin Matthews, and he's a friend down on Route 5. He was in a terrible, terrible, terrible accident with his bicycle where he turned into the traffic, and he just passed away too. And so that's kind of sad. He's our young age, and it just seemed awful. Over the winter, Grace Lehman took a fall, broke her hip, but she's with us tonight. She's all mended, and that's great news. We're happy about that. And as you can see, my hair is coming back, so all things are looking good. Tonight we're going to talk about researching our homes. And I live in the old Applewood house with my husband, Jerry Call. And this is our house as it was when it was a restaurant, and the people were walking in the door to have a chicken dinner, a 7-course meal for $1, or if they wanted steak, it was going to cost $1.25. They opened the restaurant in the 20s. They survived through the Depression, and they closed and retired in the early 50s. So all of our houses have stories, and I hope that you're ready to investigate what yours would be. I've told several of you as you came through the door that we're having a pie raffle tonight. It's a cherry cranberry pie, and our raffle is for $1, and if you still want to get in on it, just put your $1 here and your name in the basket. At the end of the night, we'll draw the winner. Let's see, what else is going on? Our bylaws say that in the month of March, we have to announce our slate of officers for the Board of Trustees that will be voted on at our annual meeting in April. So tonight we do have a slate of officers, and we have Andy Darling to come. He's the chairman of the nominating committee, and he'll tell you who is going to be put up to be elected next month in April at our annual meeting. Andy.
We have 9 people on the Board of Trustees.
We do have 9. You have to speak up because the people in the back.
We have 9 people on the Board of Trustees, and each year 3 of them come up for re-election. The ones that would be coming up for re-election this year would be Virginia Rigoni, Phyllis Darling, and Grace Lehman. On top of that, due to the passing of Bonnie Kinney, that means there would be a 4th person coming up, someone to fill her 1-year term. At the moment, Grace Lehman has offered to possibly fill in the 1-year term, and Virginia Rigoni is apparently considering re-upping. Sue Briggs has offered her name to come in, but that still leaves 1 3-year position open. We don't do elections this month, but this is the announcement so that next month we can, in the next couple of weeks, people can horse trade or decide whether they want to do it or whether they want to elect somebody from the floor next month. But, you know, no elections tonight, but there will be some in a month.
I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of these people that are running for election. We have Sue Briggs. She's been on the board for 2 3-year classes. Then by the bylaws, she has to take a year off. Sue, raise your hand. Now she's ready to come back and help us again, and so she's running for a 3-year term. Grace Lehman is volunteering. with a twist of her arm to fill that one-year position that we have on the board. When Bonnie Kenny passed away, she had 2 years. We went last year without filling that position, and we're ready to find someone. Grace would fill that position for a year. I forgot to mention Sue was a teacher for very many years. She's been chairman. She is now currently chairman of our museum committee, and she works in many different areas that we put her to work in. Grace was a teacher for many years in home economics down at Leroy Central. She has served in a variety of offices with the Historical Society, and we've appreciated all of her work. The people who are going off the board, we need to say a big thank you to. And Phyllis Darling has been on the board for, well, you know what? She was on the board before we had bylaws. So those 3-year terms really didn't apply to her. She's finally decided that she needs a respite, and she's retired from our board. She's been the secretary for many years, and this she keeps, you know, somebody will have to fill some big shoes to keep the records as straight as she's kept them. We've appreciated all that she's done. Now, Virginia Rigoni has been treasurer in perpetuity, so much so that in the bylaws they say that she doesn't even have to stand for re-election. She's just our treasurer. So I don't know how they work that but she was a little bit younger when they wrote the bylaws, and she was agreeable to those kind of terms in the bylaws. I'm forgetting someone, because someone else must be going off the board. Anyway, what we didn't mention is we do have a 4th spot that would be making 9 people on our board of trustees. It doesn't need to be filled, but it could be filled. So if someone from the gallery here wanted to either be nominated or nominate themselves, next April, next month, will be the time to do that. So think about it. We have some fun and we do a lot of work. So if you're up for it, come join us. I don't know what all I wrote here. Oh, I know. Because this is the meeting of the Historical Society, I should, or someone, and it would be Phyllis. Phyllis has vertigo. Anybody have vertigo? She just doesn't feel anything but dizzy these days, so she's not with us tonight. But if you'll bear with me, the October 2018 monthly meeting of the Stafford Historical Society, at approximately 7 p.m., President Call opened the meeting with a pledge to the flag. She made announcements regarding the upcoming Election Day baked food sale, starting at 8 a.m., and the Christmas tree lighting ceremony, which will start at 6:17 p.m. at Islet Park. She also noted that Elsie Duell and Irene Walters are both in the Genesee County Nursing Home. Irene, by the way, is home. And I don't have a report about Elsie, I'm sorry. David Kent and his wife, Patty Kent, are the auctioneers today. That night was our auction. David does the calling, and Patty will be helping with the bookkeeping with what everyone buys. A motion to close the meeting was made by Amy Swanson with a second from Cheryl White. Respectfully submitted, Phyllis Darling, recording secretary. I don't know. Robert's rules, do we accept these? We can't do anything about them. They're here in print. All plasticized and ready for history. I think that's just about basically all of our business for tonight, and so I would just close this meeting part. I'd invite Sandy Swanson to come up and introduce our speaker for the evening and tell us any other information that's on her mind. So, Sandy Swanson.
Thank you. So I had passed around the schedule for the year, and it looks like we put all the fun in the second half of the year and all the studying and thinking about what historic houses are doing in our town and in other towns around here, of course. So we're gonna have a lot of talking about preservation, because this year in May is National Preservation Month. And so we decided to use that as a theme for the year. So when Cindy gets back, I will tell you, she probably should hear this introduction, but this afternoon I was talking with Cynthia Powell, who is the person at the Landmark Society in Rochester. You probably, some of you know her. And Cynthia said, "Oh, you're having Cindy Amrhein here to do this?" And I said, "Oh yes, it's going to be really nice." And I know her from last year because she had given a talk for us last year about, can anybody say exactly what it was? It was Sacagawea? Is it Sacagawea?
Western New York. Indian?
Yeah, it was how the white people, the learned old wonderful men of money, took her land away. And it was exceedingly interesting. And I realized that she is absolutely fabulous at archiving and understanding. You know, you're getting introduced without even being here. But anyway, she's absolutely fabulous. And Cynthia said to me, "Oh, she's absolutely fabulous at this subject, and you're going to love it." So before I let you begin, I want to know if anybody didn't get this and didn't get a map. Has everybody got a map? Okay. Without further ado, Cindy is the historian
for
from
Wyoming
County.
And I used to be an abstractor. I worked for an abstract company for about 10 years. But then I became a historian, and they kind of went together, historian and abstracting, because I found researching historic properties such more fun than people's mortgages, so, you know.
Well, thanks for being here. We're going to like this and have fun with it.
And I want to tell you, this pen is pretty cool. On this end, it's blue, where the little stylus is, and the other end is black. Fancy business there. Anyway, this is my house. I live in the village of Barre. Doesn't look like much. It's got white vinyl siding. It has black shutters that, you know, you couldn't close them. They wouldn't cover the window. It's like decoration. Yeah, very small lot. Nothing interesting about it at all, you would think, right? We'll get back to my house later. I will say, though, that this part here was originally a carriage house, and that is an addition that was put on in 1910. But honestly, it doesn't really look very exciting until you start digging into the history of the house, which includes the people that lived in it. Then it gets pretty fascinating. First, I want to talk about property map numbers. If you own a house, how many of you here own a house? Okay, it's like everybody, awesome, this is great. Or even if you don't own a house and you look at a building and say, wow, that's really cool, I want to know something about it. What you would do is you'd go to the Office of Real Property and you'd look up the address of the house on whatever street it's on, and it will give you a listing in whatever town that has a property map number. That the coding here, SBL, is section, block, and lot. And for example, I'll try to show you on a big map. Let's see, where am I? 12-1-56, right here. Judge Road tells you who it's owned by and where you can find the deed of the property. Once you have that, you can go backwards and then find who owned it way back when. And up here, if you look up the tax map number, that's a little different up there, you can find out information about the property, how many acres it is, what the school district is. So interesting if you're searching your own house and other property, or you're looking to buy something and you want to investigate it before you buy it. So, these I'll leave out up here. I want you to look at them after. So, for example, if you look at this big map here, the map number 123.83 is like that number 12. This happens to be a parcel in Buffalo I'm working on Buffalo Street, which is near a Native American cemetery. So I'm doing a little research on that parcel there to make sure a squirrel doesn't encroach onto the cemetery, because the cemetery was a lot bigger. You know, that always happens. So that's your map number right there, which is always the first part of that number. That one in the middle, I don't know if you can see it very well, but see how it has 1, 2, 3, that would be your middle number, and then the last number up there, like 56, would be whatever parcel number it is. So that way, if let's say you want to go backwards and figure out how big your parcel used to be, it'd be a good idea to go to the Office of Real Property and get a map. And this way, it's to scale per inch. And you'll be able to, as you go backwards, especially if it says something like starting at the corner of Buffalo Street and Pritchard Street, you'll know you're here. And this way, so many feet. You may find out your property was actually this little triangle. In the slide, you'll see something similar to that. So I will leave these examples up here for you to look at. Here we are again. This is a tax map for the town of Alabama. And you can see those big numbers circled here. Those are the original lot numbers according to the Holland Purchase. They will always be mentioned in your deed if you're in Genesee County. If you look at this map that you have, you'll see along the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Those are ranges. So we're in Stafford right now. Let me see where we are on here. Stafford. So Stafford is partly in this other zone here, which is always a mess in the middle. That's not the Holland Purchase. And the other part of Stafford is in range 1. For our example here, town of Alabama is in range 3 and 4, town 13. So when you get your deed, it'll probably say that on your deed. It'll say town of Alabama, township 13, range 4, lot, whatever, and then you'll know exactly on your map where you are. If you keep this handy little map with you when you go searching, that'll help a great deal. So it looks like a 3-sided ruler, but it's called an engineer's scale. And that's what you use on these maps. They're all the same, and the ruler will match any map in any county because these maps are all done the same way. And as you can see how it says 1,650 feet here? So we are out of town, so every inch is 100 feet. So here's your 2, 4, 6, 10, 12, 14, 16, 50, right on the line. So it's very accurate. So if you're really going to get into the down and dirty of searching, you can get one of those like at Staples or something. Land tracts. This is the 1804 map by Cindy and DeWitt. And this is the all-encompassing. It's like more than what you have there. Because you have range 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is like right here. And you have town 7, I think, to town 12 maybe. So you have like this block kind of right in here, which was Genesee and Wyoming. But the Holland Purchase is like so beautiful to research because it's so accurate. And it's laid out in that really nice grid. Phelps and Gorham Purchase over here, that's not too bad. But this property in the middle, right up here, that was called the Morris Reserve, is a nightmare. It has like the town of Leicester's in there, pieces of Perry is in there. It's horrible because there's no beautiful little grid map to go by. And if you're searching it, do I look in Steuben County? Do I look in Genesee? Do I look in Ontario? Do I look in Livingston? Well, you better look at them all if you're going to find it. When I was searching some of Mary Jemison's land, the deed was in Genesee County, but it said, because of the way the counties split, it said Mary Jemison of the town of Perry, which I thought was really cool because, you know, I live in Perry. But it was really her property that was in here, the Middle Reservation, that was considered, at that time, all of it was Leicester. So you have to sometimes read a little bit of history, too, of the local stuff. So here, getting back to the great lots, this is the 1866 atlas over here. And as you can see, there's lot 16 and lot 17, just like Joseph Elkett laid it out. And it's still that way on a current property map, so that'll help you. And like sometimes, like if you look at A right here, that'll be in this map book. It'll have a little key, a little code that'll tell you what A is. But that is still right here. So some of this stuff you can trace easily all the way back. This part is the boring part, I know, because it's technical and it's math, and it's like, ah! Genesee County books are also very nicely done. And it's nice because they go back to 1804 or 1802. And sometimes when I'm doing my county, since my county wasn't created until 1841, from Genesee and then pieces of Allegheny afterwards, I always have to go to Genesee if I'm doing anything pre-1841. So here's some examples. In this column over here, it'll tell you basically the year. The person's first name will be blocked off alphabetical, like P through T, U through Z. This is Eaton. He's the grantee, which is the buyer. Grantor is the seller. But it'll tell you your book, your page, your track that it's in. Like HP is Holland Purchase. You know, it kind of goes like that. Then this right here is the lot number, a section if it has it, the town, and the range. So, actually this is Alabama Township 13, Range 4. There's that lot 17 that we just saw on the other map. So, their index books are beautiful. Anything in Genesee County, I tell you, it's just a pleasure to search. So now we're going to look at all the different kinds of maps that you may run into, or you should look at that you really don't think it may not have occurred to you. In Genesee County, they have a map room with lots of books. You can pull them out, flip the pages, and look at them. And you probably should, because they will have survey maps. Now this one is fairly recent, but I'll show you why it's important. Okay, this is 1958. This was the parcel right here that I was interested in. This is in Livingston County. I was working on researching the original Livingston County Poorhouse, which is on that main drag right by Denny's. I think it's Denny's. Denny's or, yeah, I think it's Denny's. Here's a survey map, 1788 of Geneseo. And if I compared that to other maps, I'll see that the angle of these roads have changed. So you have to be aware of that. If it says it's on one side of the street, it may not be anymore. So I always pay attention if it says start at the corner of the lot and measure around. because sometimes the roads change. These are surveys done 1790 that I found in the Wadsworth collection at SUNY Geneseo Library. They have a lot of great maps there. And you may not think to go to a college library, but they have some great records there. So here's my parcel right here. Here is what my person bought. Here's this piece. This piece is this piece. And I'm trying to think where it was up there because another surveyor came along and numbered the lot differently, which did not help me at all. You have to watch for that too. And comparing that to the Atlas of 1902 and the Atlas of 1852, Dr. Bissell owned it in 1852, and then Saxon owned it in 1902, and then here's the poorhouses and all that back there on the other side of the street when they moved it. And here's the interesting thing about that. Daniel Bissell, after he buys it, because they decide they need a bigger poorhouse on the other side of the road. And they were going to put the cemetery and such back there. I'm sure you went back by Walmart before and you've seen those little things with the numbers on them. Those are poorhouse cemetery markers. So Daniel goes to the board and says, "You owe me money." And they're like, "Why? What do we owe you money for?" "Because you said you were going to remove the bodies and you didn't. All you did was move the tombstones." Yeah. So, I do a little bit of dowsing too. So, I'm pretty sure there's still bodies in her backyard. And so is she. So, because that's what they did. And they do that everywhere. If they say they moved a cemetery to build something, they only move in the footprint of what they're going to build, and everything else stays. I'm seeing it time and time and time again. They just move the tombstones and the bodies stay there. Yeah, that's what happens. So Daniel Bissell was none too happy. And how I found that was looking in the Board of Supervisor minutes. If your county has the supervisor minutes back to the beginning or some really early ones, and you're researching people in a certain time frame, really, look in the Board of Supervisor minutes because there's some good stuff. I would have never known that he went there to complain, "You didn't move the bodies off my property." There it is, right in black and white, and they didn't, so they paid him. So they have to still be there. Yeah. So, poorhouse minutes, 1829. Eons ago, when Amy Alden, Livingston County historian, was the deputy historian, and records were older, and you still had things on file cards, and that's when I originally started researching this property. I went there to find out, what did they have? She goes, "Well, we don't have that, but we have this note card that says that the minutes for the poorhouse are at the Rochester Library." Okay. You know how that goes. Somebody finds something in their house and gives it to some library. So if you're researching, check all the libraries in your area. Just don't check yours or your museums. See if some of this stuff may have floated elsewhere around. So it was in very fragile condition. So what I did was, with my digital camera, and this was an old digital camera, one of the first ones, they had the little floppies. So I had a lot of floppy disks. And I went back there and I took a photograph of every single page because it was too delicate to actually, I didn't want to put it on a copy machine. So I got to a table where I had good light and I took probably over 125 digital images. So I have every page of that. I kept a copy, of course, and then I gave a copy to Amy Alden, who later became the county historian. I gave one to her for her office. So, and she was going to eventually work on trying to get that record back into their county, but I don't know, how well that went. We had the same problem in our county. I have some of our county poorhouse books, but a private collector has 2 others. because the person who was in charge of, you know, when they were making that transition to social services kind of thing, and then she died, and people do that stuff out of their house. You know how that goes too. Stuff ends up in the garbage. These are pulled out of the garbage, sold at auction, and this person bought them. But he is kindly letting us do a database of it and take digital image of all the pages, and you know, he'll have the original, but at least we'll have the information. So we have 2 of his ledgers to do, and you know, I'm grateful for that. But that happens a lot. This is a property I worked on in Orleans County. When I was abstracting, I drive by it every day. Barre Tavern, I'm like, geez, that's a beautiful building. And then I saw an article in the newspaper on this woman who did work for the Parks Department in preservation at the time, loved this house, and bought it and decided to restore it back to, you know, its original as best she could, you know, but still making it function. So, but she didn't know who owned it, who originally built it, and, you know, what happened to them. So I said, you know, I'm kind of curious too. So like I did this like for fun, right? So, and that's another one of those things, you go to Orleans, you go to Tennessee, because, you know, the counties did their split ups. So it turns out that Stephen Skinner was originally, he was a blacksmith. And before he built that tavern in 1829, he had his blacksmith shop in 1826, right on the corner. So I figure he must have worked to raise money to buy brick, because let's face it, in the 1820s, brick was probably pretty expensive in order to build this tavern. So don't just read the little newsy columns, also read the want ads of the newspapers of the time frame you're searching. Sometimes it'll say things like apple orchards and, you know, things like that, different kinds of trees that aren't on your property anymore that used to be. Maybe you'll want to replant them, you know, that kind of thing. Or it'll say how many buildings it had or how many barns. So this was a great ad because it said exactly what he did for his occupation. And then I looked at the atlases, 1878 and 1902, and yeah, tape it down, right? Oh, I won't trip, it'll be fine. So right here, we can look at Tinkham. That's who the owner was. And if you see, the building goes like this, and a little piece, another piece like this. And now we go over this way, and we see in 1902, red, it's brick, but now this is here, and there's nothing going the other way. So sometimes between the atlases or Sanborn maps, you could see if architecturally something changed. The other interesting thing about this house was, and this little spot here used to be the blacksmith shop on the corner. But what he did was, like I said, he built that first. But in reading the deeds, and you got to read all your deeds, not just, you know, who bought and who sold it, it talked about the water ran from the blacksmith shop to the tavern. So I remembered in Orleans County when they were redoing the courthouse, they found, I have a piece and I should have brought it. Not of theirs, of a different one. A wooden hollowed out log that was used for the water system. So I said, because they were doing archaeological study around that tavern, the Brockport students. So I was able to say, okay, if you're digging and you start hitting, you know, big wooden logs, you know, hold up, because that's part of the old waterworks system. And so that was pretty cool, I thought. The other neat thing about this house, oh, that's my house, hold on. In the one dining room, or bedroom, I'm not sure what it was, you opened the door and it looked like a closet with, you know, shelves. But if you opened the shelves, there was a stairway into the attic. And in the attic, this little corner thing, there was this little brick corner-like thing that one of the previous, tenants broke, so you couldn't tell. So I don't know, I thought, was it for slaves, I wonder? Or, Underground Railroad? Or it was a tavern, maybe he hid his money up there? So that was unusual. It wasn't like a piece of the chimney or anything, so that was cool about that building. You just never know what you're gonna find.
Cindy, did they always make brick houses red on those sketches?
Yes, they usually, most of the 1906, 1902, that range of atlases by, I'm not sure what company did them off the top of my head, usually red mint brick. And a lot of time, if you have the original Sanborn maps, they'll have red too for that. Yeah, so this is sort of my property, except for, this up front was the Traver Estate, and it was owned by Dr. Gilbert Traver and his wife. Actually, his wife owned the property, which I thought was pretty cool for 1860s. He didn't own it. They didn't have any children themselves. So that's the way it looked in 1889, and that's out of our Beers, Wyoming County history. And this is the way it looked in 1906. I found this photograph at the Perry Library in their photograph collection. So like I said, just ask your libraries, colleges, do you have photographs of the area, You can kind of see some of the things that are different. Like this was added, this tower was added, and this entrance was added to like this part of the building. But this stuff right here, that's the same. So I'm obviously researching Dr. Gilbert Traver. And aside from being a doctor, he was one of the founders of the Perry Village Fire Department. There's a cool photograph of him in his garb at the Perry Fire Department Museum. He was a master mason, and he was one of their, I don't know all the mason stuff, which is what's cool about your building. That's gotta be cool to be in. There's a photograph of him in our Mason's Lodge, our Masonic Temple in Perry. And he is also one of the first 50 people to get a telephone in 1894. I just thought that was cool. His obituary, because he was so important, was an insert stuck into the middle of the newspaper. This is the 1866 atlas, and when I started researching this, Sarah Traver, his wife, purchased the property in 1876 and 1889, and it originally encompassed this side of the outlet and this whole piece. That was all hers. And they had, their house was up front here. Okay, this is my house if I'm standing on Main Street and looking back. You look through a parking lot to see my house in the back. This is the view of standing on my porch looking that way. This is Traver Place, where those cars are parked, technically. And right in here used to be buildings, but they burned down in a fire in the 1940s. So here I can kind of tell by the Sanborn insurance maps, this is 1905. Here's a Traver mansion here. Here's the little barn, or whatever you want to call it, which is eventually going to get moved back. Because Gilbert Traver dies before Sarah, so she has to do something to support herself. So she moves that little piece back here's the addition that I was talking to you about. Here's my little steps that were in the original photo. And this used to be a circle, and I don't know. I look at my house, I'm like, I don't know how that circle was. I really don't get it, but it used to be a circle back there. This is the Traver mansion right here, which is later going to change. And she owns some of these buildings up front here too, by the way.
So where did you go from knowing that map to knowing what more happened to her and her money and that kind of thing?
Reading the newspapers. Reading the newspapers, and now it's easier because of Fulton history. You can type in someone's name and get a lot of hits. So my house is still back there, my neighbors. Then they build, she dies, they gotta clear the estate. They take the house, the mansion, and split it up, and the newspaper articles say up the hill. Where I am, up the hill is every direction. So every now and then I get my maps, I walk around here and try to find the pieces of my house. So that becomes the Commodore Hotel. They move a piece of the mansion, gets moved back here, and they basically use it for storage of like the summer porch furniture and things like that. Here's an aerial view. Check around different places for these two because these were at my library in their photo collection. A lot of farmers back in the 50s and the 40s, if they're up spraying their crops, would take aerial photos of the surrounding area. Okay, so here's the mansion, which is now the Traver Place apartment building. Here's the buildings that are now the parking lot that got burnt down. My house is back here behind all that. This is a little better view, looking at it a different way. This house right here that they moved back from the mansion, it burnt down in 1942. You can go in the parking lot between the old house and the apartment building and walk the footprint because it's kind of worn down back there now, so you can walk the footprint of the foundation of that building that was standing there. So that's kind of cool. And there's my house. Right there. Here's another curious property, and this is on Middle Reservation Road in the town of Castile. That is a more modern photograph, and this is also from the 1880 Wyoming County Atlas. The building looks almost exactly the same. Not much has changed there. Maybe the porch, it's hard to tell from that, but yeah, even the fork-looking part of the architecture on here is the same. So the only thing is the barns are gone. The interesting thing about these barns, though, is they go in a pattern where one's here, one's here, one's here, one's here, where it's open in the middle. Thought that was kind of odd. It was built by Josiah Andrews, who turns out to be an abolitionist, never lived in the house. Built it, but never lived there. He ran a newspaper. This is 1836. So he builds it about 1838 that I can figure. If you look at different deeds, you can sometimes tell by what someone buys and sells it for the next time around. If there's a big jump in price to the next owner, that usually means something significant had been built on that property. Here's the interesting thing. That property during that 1840, 1850s era changed owners quite often. And I thought, what if the Underground Railroad, they didn't change the site? What if they just left the site the same and changed the owners? And this way, when the slave runners are coming up looking for somebody, I'm looking for Mr. Smith's house. No, Mr. Smith's in the village. I thought it was over here. No, Mr. Jones lives there. You know, so maybe they changed the owners, because I find other abolitionists in this house. For example, the Sleeper family. So Anson Sleeper buys this house in 1855. Reuben Sleeper, his uncle, also an abolitionist, lives in Mount Morris. And Jonathan Sleeper, who's the father of Anson, lives right in the village of Perry. Now, on this road, still, if you go down Middle Reservation Road, there's hardly a house on it. I mean, that's perfect. You could run slaves up, keep them there, and, you know, go in any direction. Go to the uncles, go to the fathers. Oops. And like I said, maybe that's why the barns were set up like that. It was on a corner. You could see somebody coming from any direction up the road. So, you know, you could say, go in this barn, go in that barn. I don't know. That's a theory, but you should also check to see private collections. A lot of private collectors have photographs, and if you know who they are and you ask them nicely, sometimes they will share with you. This is a photograph that was done on a glass negative in 1883 of 123 Bank Street. Does anybody know why that house is important? This is the house, same house. I took the picture in 2003. It's almost exactly the same. It is where Johnson Lynch was murdered by Ian Rowel. You know, the box manufacturing guy? A lot of people think that he murdered Lynch in that fancy roundish house. No, that's a house Rowell built for a second wife. So what happens is, they used to live in Utica. And this I know from researching this murder, separate from, you know, this project. But whenever Edward Rowell went out of town, his wife and this Johnson Lynch from Utica would meet up, right? So the one day, he says, I'm going on the train, I gotta go for business, but he doesn't, right? Circles back, hides in the closet. These are also from this private collection. This is crime scene photos. These could be like the first crime scene photos, you know, ever. For all we know, this is really early 1883. He hid in the closet. Johnson Lynch was over here, right? Here's the bed. So obviously he hops up pretty quick, right? And he goes to go down the stairway here, and he gets shot in the back while pulling up his britches, and he dies right here, and they cut the carpet out because that's where the big splotch of blood was that showed where he died. You don't know what's in a person's private collection. I know a lot of private collectors, so, and they share with us, our office. So whenever I'm looking for something, I'll say, do you happen to have a photograph of blah, 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 blah? I need it for a story for Historical Wyoming. And they'll just scan it and send it to me. So yeah, you should ask. And this is decor of 1883. That's even pretty cool in itself. Of course, he gets off scot-free because he was like one of the biggest employers in Batavia at the time. His cell had some of his personal furniture in it from his house. So how seriously were they taking this? So in there, after he gets, you know, obviously they dismiss it and blah, blah, blah. And in their divorce decree, which is in Genesee County, you can't look into a divorce file because those are sealed. However, judgments and decrees aren't just about money judgments. You can see divorces in there, and it'll tell you that they are divorced. And in this particular divorce document, it said she was not allowed to remarry again ever. Who cares, right? It's 1883. It's not like you have photo ID. She went out west and remarried. And he also remarried and built his second wife that beautiful house. So, yeah, there's always more to the story. So, yeah, it was awesome that this collector had these photos. This is really cool. If you're looking, you should look in miscellaneous records, because here you will find things like adoptions, because back then, you know, it wasn't a big deal. They were just agreements between families. Like this one here is in Genesee County, and if you're at all familiar with the town of Alabama, let's see where I am. Okay, we're talking about Shaughnessy Chamberlain of Alabama, Genesee County, parent of Nina Chamberlain, whose mother is dead, do hereby consent that Charles W. Bazum of said town will hereafter be the child's, legal adopted parent. So that happened in 1873. So there you go. If you're doing genealogy and you wondered where that child was of the Bazums, it's because she was adopted. Okay, so those are there.
Where was that?
In miscellaneous records. Yeah, you find a lot of good stuff in miscellaneous records. And if you're doing any kind of like Civil War stuff, a lot of times you'll find the military discharges are in miscellaneous records. This one, yes, it's a bastardy proceedings. This is from Orleans County. And the judge and the poor master said, no, we're not paying for her care. You are. And he made this gentleman, August Mager, take out a mortgage on his house for $75 to take care of Julia, what was her last name? Julia Sherman, during her, let's see. So Julia alleges that she is pregnant with child, and the said August Mager, and that said child is likely to be, a charge of the town. So they made him take out a $75 mortgage on his house in order to help care for her while she was, until the baby was born. Yeah. And that was in mortgages. Who would think to look in mortgages, right? Yeah, that's where that was. So you never know where these good things are going to find. Maps, maps, and more maps. I love maps. This is really New York. And we give our kids the wrong impression when we give them their history books. And, way back to 1780, they're showing New York State like, yeah, no. You had it. These few little counties all the way over east, that was New York. And then you have other great maps like this. This is beautiful. This is the Hudson River right here. That's the Mohawk River. There's Quebec. Here are the Genuseos, which are the Geneseo Seneca and Senecas. Look at these beautiful Palisade drawings. That's 1656. You have the Jesuits who would go through and minister to the Indians, and the whole time they were out, they were drawing maps. So, yeah. Every house has a story to tell. The question is, are you listening? Now, before we go anywhere else, I want to tell you a couple of things, if I still have it here. If I didn't lose it off my desktop. Yeah, that's right here. These are different links that are in your brochure on the last page. And I'm going to tether quickly to my phone. I say quickly because I'm like hoping I can do it quickly. these are a bunch of other places. David Rumsey's map collection. You will find on this website some of the most beautiful maps you have ever seen. And they will have maps. They will have old exploration maps in case you need to zoom in on an area and see what was going back way, way back when, like that one Indian map. I don't know if this has, I'm on a county laptop, it's not going to let me download it. Anyway, there's a viewer you can download, and you can look at a lot of the older Genesee County maps, New York State maps, and zoom in on areas to see what's different, like railroads and regular roads, and I just can't stress it enough. I use his website quite often in books when all those maps that I just showed you are from his website. Then there are the Making of America websites. There's one in Cornell and one in Michigan. And you could type in your ancestor's name. And it'll come up, like here you go, Reformed Dutch Church records, different histories, sketchbooks, things on the American Revolution. I found little biographies on people who I was researching on that website. Library of Congress, believe it or not, has stuff local in our area, photographs and maps. Archives.org is where people upload different books, documents, tape recordings. I'm trying to think of something I could search for. Like in case I was like researching Tuscarora Indians, which I am apt to do at times. Well, you'll get old yearbooks, obviously, Tuscarora, so you may find your relatives. Not a good example. Oh, Legends and Traditions of the Iroquois. You'll find Buffalo Historical Society documents on here, diaries. There's a lot of good information on this one. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Bureau of Land Management records, but you can look up your family on here if they went out west, Michigan, any of those states, and you can actually open up their field notes. Like you can pick your state, like even if I wanted to look at New York, there won't be much for New York. I'll say any county, for an example. And there's quite a lot of them. Here's the boundary line of the Allegheny Reservation. But once you open it, you can open up the image of the map and see the map. So I've tracked people from here out west to Michigan, and then tracked in Michigan records. FultonHistory.com you all know about. I want to show you, I know a lot of you are familiar with Family Search. That's the Latter-day Saints website. But we'll like just a minute. So when you get here, if you go to the search records, it should pull up research by location. And here we are going to, hopefully, it's not going to show me. All right, here's the map. If you search by location, you click on United States and you go down to New York, for example, yes, you can go on their search engine and the main search engine and type stuff, right, and get a lot of things come up. The things most people don't know is underneath on the state page, it'll tell you image only historical records. So these are records that are online, but they're not indexed yet. So you can scroll all the way down and look at, as soon as I find it, I probably went too far. Oh, here we go. Land records. So you can look at your deed, if you can't get to the courthouse, you can look at the indexes for the deeds right online. You can also I'm going to search by county. So let's say here they all are. Not all of them, but up to maybe the 1880s. So you can go down here and look at your indexes. Like here's your grantee index. 1802 and 1804 is the deeds. The other grantee index that says 1802 to 1912 is mortgages. But let's pick any page. So you can look from the comfort of your home and look up your deeds. How cool is that? And most people don't realize that this stuff is on there, it's just not indexed. So now you can do the same thing. My county is kind of horrible because our surrogates court, they did like everything individually. But Genesee County, it'll be in the index. And then everything is all nicely, tells you where to look. So here you go. Guardianships, you have wills, administration papers, the general index. You can look at it all right online without going to the courthouse. So that's pretty cool, huh? So those are the things that I wanted to share with you on that. And then on the very bottom there, it says, don't forget when Ancestry.com and Fold 3 have their free week, take advantage of that. Or if, what was the other one? Oh, state archives. Every state pretty much has an archive. Michigan has a crazy amount of stuff online at their archive site that you can find out about your family. So does Canada. Canada had some great things like naturalization records, you know, and I know a lot of people, Genesee County, they came down from Canada, so that may be helpful. So, okay, that was very long, so I apologize. Anybody have any questions? I talked too much already. Yes.
This is probably, it's almost kind of a small thing, but once upon a time I was told by one neighbor on one side that they own the stone wall fence. And then I was told by the people on the other side that they own the stone wall fence. Have you heard of that kind of?
Oh yeah, all the time. The worst places I find that happening, being an abstractor too, is any of the lake properties. Like Silver Lake or, what's the other one? Silver Lake, I'm trying to think what's the other one, Java Lake, all those, and village properties. I had once where the property line went through a garage. And I'm reading it and it goes all the way back to the garage wall, then east, so I'm like, what? And I'm trying to picture this in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, what happened was, it was a bigger parcel, and they had their house, and then they did that mother-in-law thing, right? And built that house. They didn't split the properties, right? And they built the garage in the middle. So mother-in-law, of course, dies. These people, you know, they move. So now you got these properties that are on one piece, and the line is down the middle because they sell the mother-in-law one, and it talks about going through the garage because there was a wall that was like 4 feet high in the middle of the garage. Because you had two separate owners now. The garage was still there, and there was a concrete wall down the middle, which was the property line. So yeah, I've seen some really crazy things.
Was there ever any rule that went with the stone wall fence would go with the property on the south or on the north?
No, it's not usually worded like that. It's usually like whoever built it, and they will fight over it. And a lot of times to solve the dispute, if it doesn't say anywhere, is they'll do what's called a boundary line agreement. And then so-and-so will have to agree to this, and so-and-so will have to agree to that, and it'll either get filed in deeds or miscellaneous records. So there are those cases. Your handout is like, this is like, there's so much to this, it should be like a college class, but you can't teach this in college. It's like an apprenticeship job being an abstractor, because there are so many variables like concrete walls. But there's a lot of things in this little handout.
By the way, Cindy has been the author of this handout.
Oh yeah, and feel free to copy and share, because that's fun. It's meant to be a teaching tool. There's all kinds of things in here that you should think about. Powers of attorney, leases, land contracts. Like Holland Land Company, there's some beautiful maps in the clerk's office. They're called the Holland Land Company maps. And it'll have everybody on there who bought a parcel, and it'll say 1825 or 1836. Okay, that's when they got their deed. If you bought property through the Holland Land Company, you were getting out a land contract. You did not get your deed until your contract was paid off. Then you would get put on that map so they knew who owned it. So a lot of people think, oh, they bought it, which doesn't mean they kept it. Then there are wills, and then the 50-year rule of thumb is important to read because families, especially way back when, do what they want and not what they should. Like, they'll just let so-and-so live there, then they live there, then they live there. And then, the third grandson down the line says, I'm moving out of state. I gotta sell this, and the title is a mess. And you gotta go back and try to find all these people and prove if they're dead or not, and if their kids are dead, if they have any right, because they never probated the estate. So, I always say go 50 years ahead. I had to do a cell tower once like that. I ended up having to do a 100-year title search for a cell tower because I couldn't prove clear title until I went back 100 years. Yeah, bad stuff. Families are like that. There's also some tips on surrogate's court and looking for lost children, like if they've sort of disappeared. The kind of things you can look in guardianship records and poor master records, all that stuff. Like I said, town supervisor minutes, town minutes, judgments and decrees, civil actions. And on the very last page, kind of gives you an idea of how Genesee County was split into the other counties in case you do end up having to county hop. You'll kind of know maybe where to go next. So
I think this is very addictive.
oh yeah, sometimes I'm researching this property on Buffalo Street, and I'm going way back, and I'm finding out a lot of things like there really is no such thing as the Ogden Land Company. They never incorporated, it was just Joseph Bellows and the Ogden brothers, and they each, I think they bought this land and then decided who was going to get what, because they convey out separately. They never convey as the Ogden Land Company, because even things came up way down the line on different properties that allegedly still owned, and the Department of Interior, because some of it was Indian land, and said alleged Ogden Land Company, because they never incorporated, they never made a company. There was no, they were just these guys, and they were known as, that's what people just dubbed them. Yeah, so.
The first records went from Holland Land Office down to Canandaigua
What do you mean?
to be recorded.
I'm not really sure, because Ontario, yeah, probably Ontario County was before Genesee County. It was the original county. So yes, I've had to go there too. Title searching to try to find something.
Well, does anybody have any other questions? If you can really get into it.
Yeah.
So we're left with going home to do some recording, or going and deciding what we want to find out.
Right, and if you have an abstracted title, if you have your abstracted title already, you're like halfway there. Because you can research your people who owned the house during the time frames that they owned it. And find out if anybody died in there, find out if you can find anything in the newsy columns that they built the addition, or, there's, all kinds of things you can find.
Well, this was really interesting.
Oh, good.
We really appreciate you coming here and doing this for the second time.
Well, thank you. And I have cards up here in case you have any, or my email is on the front of that too. So if you have any questions, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to try and help you, direct you in the right direction, or give you some other ideas of what to look at.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.